What was your role in working with Koko? How long did you work with Koko?
And so for 5 years, I taught Koko sign language. We worked in a trailer that was behind the Stanford Museum. That's where she lived when she was little. And she was on one side of a chain link fence and I was on the other side. And I went several times a week and it was all very set out. She had a list of words that she was supposed to learn in sign language. And then she had a list of words she knew in sign language that I was supposed to make sure she still knew. I had to think of ways to make her say them spontaneously.
What did you know about gorillas before you started to work with Koko?
I really didn't know anything about gorillas. I had seen them at the zoo, like a lot of people did when they were children. I was studying sign language at the time. I already knew quite a bit of sign language. I was studying sign language and my sign language teacher came to me and said, there's a woman and she wants to teach a young gorilla American Sign Language. She needs somebody who's free a few mornings a week and she pays well. And I said, well, I need a job, so that sounds good. So I really did it just for the money at the beginning.
What did you learn about gorillas while working with Koko?
Oh, well, I learned a lot about them. They're, of course, very intelligent, really devoted to each other, to the people that they hang out with. There were a group of us teachers. At the beginning, there were just a few of us that were there all the time. They have very strong emotions. Koko, I mean, I'll just say, learning about Koko, and then Michael, the gorilla that came to live with her while I was still there teaching. They have incredibly strong emotions. And I think the most surprising thing I learned about gorillas is that if you've ever seen a photo or a film of a gorilla, their hands are incredibly big and they have very fat fingers. And yet Koko could pick up a cockroach by one leg. She had that kind of pincher motion, fine motor control. No human has that. And yet her fingers looked like she could barely pick up a cock, but yeah, incredible. That was the most surprising thing I ever saw. They're very strong too. She could break a ballpoint pen in half without even breaking a sweat.
Did you ever sign with Koko?
Yeah, was my job. That's what I did. Hours and hours, several days a week, just from we spoke to her in English and American Sign Language. Everything we did was in both languages, unless there were certain times of the day when we were only supposed to use sign language and certain times of the day when she only heard English, but the majority of it was both. We had to figure out ways to get her to sign to us signs that she already knew. So for example, one day she was supposed to be working on body parts and she knew all the signs for body parts. They're very easy, you know, eye is this and ear is this. It was my job that day to make her like spontaneously say those signs. So she figured out what I was up to, and in like 2 seconds she was like, eye, ear, nose, mouth, boring. And that's how I knew that she could indeed communicate using sign language, because the word boring was not in my mind that day. There was no way I could have like somehow cued her to say that. She did it spontaneously. And she was right. It was really boring when we had to do body parts. I hated it.
What were some of the things she said?
She would talk about things in her environment, like when she had her cats, she was always talking about her kitten. She would comment on things outside the window. She was always watching out for birds. She loved to talk about birds. She made up her own signs. She put signs together, not in sentences like we would, but I always thought one of the most remarkable ones she did was, I don't know if you've ever seen the inside of a pomegranate, but pomegranates were one of Koko's favorite fruits. But she didn't know the sign for pomegranate, and to this day, I don't know the sign for pomegranate either, because she called them red corn fruit drink. And if you think about the inside of a pomegranate, that's what it looks like, right? And that's what it tastes like when you eat it. So she just spontaneously talked about everything. She loved to read. She had dolls. She would talk about when she was bad. She would admit to being bad and say she was sorry.
Do you think communicating with another species is important? What lessons can we learn?
Well, I think knowing as much as we can about the world that we live in and all the creatures that are in it is important. When I started teaching Koko, it wasn't about like some big communication thing or being a scientist or anything. It was a job, like any job. But over time, I realized, I think it helps us, it certainly helped me learn things about myself, to know that there were other creatures out there, like this gorilla, who also had emotions like I did, and could feel sad, and could feel sorry, and could be regretful, and mad, and happy, and playful. I hope that this kind of work helps everybody appreciate how important it is to have all these creatures in the world with us, and to be respectful of them and their lives.
Thank you.
You're welcome.